All right, welcome everyone, and sorry about the delay. We're starting the open house about 20 minutes late. I guess some people were having difficulty signing in. We think we've rectified that now. Good evening and welcome to the open house of September 24th for 4 Winward Drive. The basic premise of this open house is to provide the opportunity for the public to provide input on a proposed development application. To ensure a fair process, members of council are to hear public input, but not engage in debate about the merits of the application. Opinions on the application should not be made at this time. Members will have the opportunity to express all their views and concerns when the final staff report and recommendations come back. A subsequent public meeting will be held at a later date in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. As we navigate our first virtual open house meeting, we ask all participants for your patience. Each participant will be called in order and will be provided 10 minutes to speak. Each presenter may speak only once. When you are called, we ask that you state your name and address. Persons addressing council should confine their remarks to the business at hand and shall direct their comments or questions to the chair. Questions will be addressed at the end of your delegation. If you feel that your questions have not been responded to this evening, you can email our planning department at planning@grimsby.ca. This meeting is conducted in accordance with the town's procedural bylaw. All participants are asked to conduct themselves with decorum and respect and provide the opportunity for all members of the public to express their opinion in an environment of tolerance on all points of view and free of intimidation. The intent is to create a venue to encourage people to participate in the process and provide their input. Thank you. And am I welcoming Martin first or Walter? All right, Walter, take it away.
Just give me a second, I'll start sharing the screen. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, as you mentioned, this is a public open house, which is for the property at 4 Winward Drive. In consideration tonight is an application to amend the official plan and an application to amend the zoning bylaw. The agenda for the meeting tonight is I will be doing a brief presentation, just doing a brief overview of the process and a high-level review of the proposal and relevant planning policies and zoning regulations. Following my presentation, the applicant will do a presentation with a more detailed description of the proposal and the applications that are before us. And then we'll open the floor to questions and comments. Again, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide an overview of the planning process and how you can get involved in the process. Provide an overview of the policy and regulatory framework, rules and regulations that are in place. The applicant will provide information and details regarding the proposal and will be able to answer any questions on your feedback. Why can plans or bylaws change? The Planning Act provides authority for applicants to submit applications for development proposals that do not meet the current official plan and or zoning bylaw. The town is required to process these applications. Official plan and zoning bylaws may only be amended if it can be determined that the proposed changes comply with the overall intent of the official plan and result in development that is compatible with surrounding neighborhoods. Here's a flow chart illustrating where we are currently. We had a pre-consultation meeting with the applicants identifying what materials were required to be submitted. The list of materials can be viewed on our website under current applications. And it's quite an extensive list. So if anybody has any interest in the application, go to that site and look at the details. The applications were circulated to public agencies for technical review. Currently, we are having the public open house. Following the public open house, there will be a statutory public meeting where, again, the public will have an opportunity to participate. Following that, there will be an analysis and potential revisions to the application based on information received from the public and from other government agencies. And this will be followed by a staff recommendation report and concluded with a council decision. And again, different ways to have your say. We really want to know what you think. There isn't a comment form, but again, you can write an email to the planning department at this address, and you can send a copy of your letter or email to a ward councillor. It's your choice. Now, how to stay informed. Provide your mailing address to the planning department. By doing so, you will receive notices of all future meetings associated with these applications. You'll receive information on how to obtain a staff report prior to it being submitted to public scrutiny for and council for a decision. Information regarding speaking in front of a committee, should you wish to do so, and how to do it. And information on how you can appeal the application should it go not in favor. This is a brief, I'll just briefly illustrate what's being proposed. This is a landscape plan which shows, as I'm showing here in the light purple, the locations of the buildings here and here. There is extensive landscaping proposed and proposed in the center of the site adjacent to Winston Road. And the main access points are proposed to be off of Winward Drive and off of Winston Road. The main loading area is proposed to be off the east side of the site into the east side of the building. I'll show a couple of illustrations that were submitted with the applications. This is the site as viewed from the corner of Winston Road and Hunter Road. This is as would be viewed from the parking lot of the Tim Hortons across the street at Winward Drive. In the official plan, I'll just briefly go over some of the high-level policy requirements that we have. The site is highlighted here in black. And as you see, it's within the mixed-use high-density designation, which is the red designation. This designation permits a variety of commercial uses mixed with apartment-style development. And also, and it has requirements of a minimum floor area for any development within this area of 1 time the lot area and a maximum of 3 times the lot area. The maximum height in the policies is 12 stories for this area. Also, as you see, the hatched area, it's identified as, or the designation is with the Winston Road Main Street overlay designation. Now, what this overlay designation does is it restricts to a minor degree the type of commercial uses that are permitted within this area. It tries to assemble all the uses along the Winston Road frontage that are commercial uses and establishes storefront design policies to try to achieve a Main Street appearance along Winston Road. The amendment to the official plan that's being proposed is to increase the maximum floor area that would be permitted on the site from 3 times the lot area to 4.83 times the lot area, and to permit a maximum height of 19 stories increase from 12 stories to 19 stories. The zoning bylaw currently zones the site neighborhood development ND. This zone permits only detached dwellings, including bed and breakfasts and other uses within existing dwellings. The existing hotel use is actually a legal non-conforming use on the site based on the zoning current requirements. The proposed zoning for the site is a mixed-use, high-density MHD zone. This zone permits apartment buildings, townhouses, and a variety of commercial uses, such as retail uses, restaurants, hotels, and office uses, and other uses also. The proposed modifications to the performance standards of the MHD zone for the site include again, an increase in height to the 19 stories to permit the proposed 19-story building, a slight reduction in parking, and a change in the setback requirements for the buildings on the site. Again, that's a brief presentation. Again, just a high-level overview of what's being proposed and what the relevant official plan policies are. I will now turn over to Martin Quarkapone. He's the planning consultant for the applicants, and I will, if you bear with me for a second, I will switch to Martin's presentation. Give me 1 second. Martin, I think we're ready. So if you're ready.
Thank you, Walter. I'm just waiting for the presentation to load on my side. But I think while we start that, I'm going to do a few introductions. Hello, members of committee, Mr. Mayor. My name is Martin Quarkapone, and I'm an associate and land use professional planner with Winston Consulting. I've been retained by the Rosso Group to assist with the redevelopment of their lands at 4 Winward Drive. I believe the majority are familiar with the site, which currently has occupied the Casablanca Hotel on site. With me this evening, I've got Mr. John Mellenbacher, Scott Moffett, and Charles Mady, who's watching via live stream, all from the Rosso Group. And I've got John, and I believe Scott as well, who are logged in to answer any questions that I may not be able to, that might be more specific to the development process or their program. And also with me, I've got Brianne Robinson, who's a planner with my office, who's assisting me with this project. And I'm going to assume you can all hear me okay. There we go.
Yes, we can. Thank you. Okay, I think we got your presentation up now.
Great. So next slide, please.
1 second. Okay.
Thank you. So this is the site here, as I've mentioned, which contains the Casablanca Hotel. It's currently a bit of a 2.5-story building with surface parking around it. The area in question is predominantly residential in nature, with low-rise commercial uses as well. You can see from this aerial that there is existing ongoing redevelopment to the north and northeast, as well as ongoing redevelopment to the east as well. What's not shown on this aerial, which is the other east half of this block, is 10 Winward Drive, which has development applications and approvals for a 19-story building. Next slide, please. The next few slides I'll go over quickly because I believe Walter's done a good job, thank you, of going over the planning policy aspects of the proposal. But what we have here are mapping of the town's official plan. And what you see specifically on the right-hand side is the land use schedule, which identifies the subject lands as a residential mixed-use area, which the intent is to provide for mixed uses such as the ones proposed, including residential, commercial, retail. Next slide, please. This is the land use map for the Winston Road Neighborhood Secondary Plan area. The subject lands are identified there in red. Again, Walter went over the specific land use policies that apply to this particular property. What I'd like to note with this slide is if you can look at those 2 green circles that are to the left of the subject lands, those are parkettes that the secondary plan has identified for public use. And again, what I've noticed is what you don't see around our lands are no other parkettes that are planned for. There are some open spaces and natural areas along the waterfront for the north and northeast, but there are no parkettes or open spaces planned for the high density residential neighborhoods that are shown on this land use map. And I'll come back to that in a minute in my presentation. Next slide, please. Again, the zoning schedule that Walter had already gone through. The lands are zone ND, which is more of a placeholder zone to allow existing uses to continue. But the intent of these zones is to rezone and redevelop into what the official plan, secondary plan policies intend. If you see on this map, which is slightly outdated, to the east of us, which is 10 Winward Drive, which was zone ND, when they went through their approval process, they were rezoned to the mixed-use high-density zone, which is the intent for our lands as well. Next slide, please. And as part of the Winston Road streetscape analysis that the town had completed some years ago, which is for the most part built out on Winston Road, they identified the components and streetscape treatments that they intended to see within this part of the town and this particular corridor. As I noted, that the majority of these improvements are complete, and our proposal includes slight modifications to allow for accesses to the site, but for the most part, we intend to maintain that Main Street feel along Winston Road. What you don't see, and what I'll show you on further slides, is some of the treatments that we were looking for on the south side, on the Winward side. Next slide, please. This site has a bit of a history in terms of its approvals process and starts and stops. This slide provides a bit of an outline of the project history, and I'll go through it rather quickly because I want to jump into the actual proposal itself. We first submitted an application for the eastern portion of these lands back in December of 2017. At that time, it was for a 22 and 19-story building with a 5-story podium while maintaining the operation of the existing hotel. After the submission in March of the next year, we had an open house much like this. I recall that night very fondly, and in terms of the feedback we got. I will say that the feedback was concerning in terms of the approach we were taking with the site. So based on what we heard that day and commentary that we heard from both town and regional staff, Rosso took a step back to reevaluate how we are approaching the property. And we came up with a revised design that takes a more holistic approach to the redevelopment of the Casablanca Hotel site. I'll get into, again, the more specific details of that proposal, but the last 2 bullet points there include a second open house that we had May last year, which was a very close version of the proposal we had submitted later last year. I will say, and I believe planning staff were in attendance, the feedback we received on that particular open house was pretty good. It was well received. Some of the components we added to the project were appreciated, and the design revisions were appreciated, and the decrease in height was also appreciated. And the last 2 bullet points there show the pre-consultation that Walter had mentioned that we had gone through with staff in the region, and then ultimately we submitted the application, a resubmission actually. We withdrew our old application, filed a new one almost 2 years later that includes the entire site. Next slide, please. So for a bit of background, for those who may not remember, this was the proposal that we had submitted in December of 2017. You can see the hotel on the left-hand side, and with that, there's a dotted dashed square to the left of that, which was a contemplated extension to the existing hotel. But the development proposal was for the eastern, call it third of the site. And you can see the site plan, which shows the 22-story building on the north half, and then the 19-story on the south. And this was a proposal that included a 5-story podium, and which was comprised of retail at grade facing Winston Road, but for the majority of that podium, it was parking. Given that we weren't able to touch the underground of the hotel, we had to confine our parking to 2 levels below and 5 within the podium. This was not well received, given the inappropriate use of that space. So that was partially why we took a step back to see how we could look at this in a bit better lens to see how we can distribute parking and use that internal floor space, not for parking, but for the betterment of the community. Next slide, please. This is a rendering of the previous application with the very large 22-story building in the front with the 19 in the rear, and that wood horizontal podium. That is where we had proposed the parking, and you can faintly see the retail at grade, which is still maintained in the new proposal, but in a different configuration. Next slide, please. This is the new proposal that Rosso has brought forward after consultation with staff, region, and even the public. What we have here is what we call phase one, which is almost the same kind of area as the original proposal, where we have a 19-story tower with a 4-story podium. But instead of having just residential within this component of the proposal, we see it as a phase to see the next generation or next evolution of the hotel portion of the lands. So the intent here is to redevelop that eastern portion with a mix of hotel, conference, retail, restaurant, as well as with residential uses to reinvigorate the property and to see it grow. Once phase one is complete, they will demolish the hotel. Also will demolish the existing hotel and build phase two, which would be called the Boomerang building to the left there, which is a 12-story mid-rise building. This building comprises of retail uses on the inner side of the Boomerang, called the north side, that faces Winston Road. The south and west sides will have townhouse units that front the street and will have their own private entrances and exits. They will have access to the below grade parking, which I'll get into in a minute, but those units will have their own dedicated doors for townhouse feel. Above those are 2-story lofts and other traditional apartment units. And the next slide will provide a bit more detail into the site's configuration. Next slide, please. So it's slightly hard to see for me, but this is the exact proposal in terms of the composition of the floor, the ground floor of each building. What we have with phase one, which is the eastern side, is the retail and restaurant uses that front onto Winston Road to ensure that we have that activity and have that Main Street feel that was asked for through the town study. Access for both components of the hotel and apartment units will be from the south side on Winward Drive. If you can see that donut shape image at the bottom of the drawing, that is the internal driveway system that will provide access to and underground access to both buildings. I'm sorry, not underground, I apologize. Lobby access to both buildings. The driveway and underground access is further west for the Boomerang building and on the north side of phase one for the hotel building. And I mentioned this issue of, or a concern we had about open space in Parkland. As the landscape plan that was shown previously by Walter, we decided to incorporate a public open space as part of this development. We felt that that was something that was lacking in this part of the town, but also it would also benefit the existing residents as well as those through this proposal. So we have a 1,500 square meter courtyard open space that we intend to have for public use, not restricted to those who are either at the hotel or live in these buildings, but whoever wants to grab a coffee, have dinner at these restaurants, have full use of that space. And as we go through this approval process, Rosso will intend to invite the public to see how to program that space. It will be a space that will not, again, be for just the residents of this proposal, but for the community at whole. And we'll be working with staff in the future once we get further along the process to see how we can program that more specifically and tailor it to the interests and tastes of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. So this is the underground parking plan, which is pretty much consistent for the next three. This proposal includes 3 levels of underground parking. And I noted that this is going to be a phased development. So if you can see that dashed line that goes from the north side down about 2 or 3/3 and then over to the left, that's the phase line for the parking. We don't want to disrupt the operation of the existing hotel while we excavate and build for phase one. So that will be the limit of the parking for phase one. And then as we develop phase two, we would excavate the remainder of the lands for below grade and then build phase two above. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick summary table of items that I think are important to showcase in terms of what we previously proposed in 2017 to where we are now. What we've got, again, are 2 towers that are 19 stories and 12 versus the 19 and 22 that we had 2 years ago. Our density has gone up because we are no longer maintaining all that empty space with the hotel portion of the lands. We're utilizing that to build up and provide amenities through the hotel, which we believe is an important component of the neighborhood and the town, as well as to include as much retail and commercial and convention space as possible. The unit counts have also increased. We have 420 units. This is broken down into 72 hotel, 10 townhouse units that I mentioned as part of phase 2. Above that, there are 25 two-story lofts, and the remaining units are all apartment units. In terms of sizes, that will be figured out through the process. One thing that I will note is the world has changed drastically in the last 6 months. And I'll say that the hotel and hospitality industry has changed severely. So we'll be working with staff to refine those numbers appropriately. And we want to have the flexibility to ensure that we have some form of hotel on the property, but we also want to have a successful operation for the town. So between Rosso, town staff, and perhaps the public, will have to have a discussion around the proposed and precise unit mix. The parking spaces have dramatically increased from the 245 to the 909. This is because we have more space to put spaces into. I will note that this parking total is a deficiency of what the bylaw actually requires. What we did was we based the required parking for our proposal on the rates that were approved for the neighboring 10 Winward site, which require reductions in parking. That's how we came to our number at about 909. But we are deficient by 36 spaces. And we've been made aware that parking is an issue in this part of the town. And I've spoken with the members at Rosso, and we will be looking to revise that total up to the required parking number. So that 909 will increase the bylaw requirement, which I believe is 943. The retail space has also increased dramatically because we have more space to play with. And again, this includes various retail uses that will be planned at a later date, but we intend to provide uses that the community will need and will benefit from. The open space I mentioned, which was not part of the previous proposal, is at 1,500 square meters. And the last component is the amenity space. With the ability to build more building, you're able to provide more amenity space in terms of terraces and indoor amenity space for residents as well as occupants of the hotel. Next slide, please. This is the landscape plan that Walter had shown earlier in his presentation. It just gives the idea of where we foresee the trees and plantings for the site. And you can see that the courtyard is heavily planted. This is our interpretation of what this would look like. We are not tied down to what we're showing currently. We work with our landscape expert to prepare something that we think works. This could be a jump off or discussion point for the large community as well as staff and council, but we will revise and adjust that space as needed to make sure we hit all the marks for the public and the neighbors at hand. Next slide, please. This is just a zoom in of that space, and this is how I see that space. To me, it's blank. It's a canvas where we can take some time, design, figure out what works best. We're not quite sure if this space is an area where we need playgrounds or seating or more active areas. So again, this is something that we're focused on and we intend to address later in a more detailed process, through the site plan process, that is. But this is something we're not forgetting, but we want to just really flag this issue because it's something that we're excited for that we don't think we've seen in the town before. Next slide, please. Again, if it wasn't clear in the zoomed out version of the landscape plan, this is the zoomed in, and it gives you a bit more detail of the connections to Winward Drive, Winston Road, as well as the retail and open spaces, rather the patio areas on both sides. So we see this as a very active area of people walking around, biking, sitting, chatting, eating. I guess when we can all get back to sitting outside without masks, but this is something that we'll all be able to use in the future. Next slide, please. The next 3 slides are just renderings that our architects prepared of the buildings, a couple of which Walter has already shown and shared. But with this view, more of an aerial view, you can see the composition and layout of the building. You can see that the left-hand building, which is a taller building, the predominant massing and building form is at the 12 stories, which is what the official plan calls for. And you can see the terraces and outdoor areas above the 4-story podium. And moving over to the right-hand side, you can see that the boomerang building composition frames the courtyard area. And again, these are conceptual renderings of what that space can look like. And again, we're not tied down to what we're showing here right now. Next slide, please. This is a view from the back on the south side. This was shown by Walter. And then the next slide should show you a bit of more of a detailed view of that courtyard space. Next slide, please. Sorry. Thank you. So my last couple of slides are just, sorry, next slide, please. I'm not sure if it's frozen, but the next couple of slides are just next steps in terms of how we, oh, there we go, how we intend to move forward. And again, Walter touched on this. We're still receiving comments back from town staff and agencies. We've got the majority of comments, which for the most part are supportive. The regional comments are supportive of the proposal and the heightened density in the land uses. They see this as a good fit for the Winston area. What we're here today to do is grab comments from both the public as well as committee to take that back and to consider, like we did last year with this redesign. And then once we've gone through those two processes, we'll take a step back, look at all the comments, see how we can best address them to make this proposal even better. With that said, I'm at the end of my presentation. The last slide is just a thank you, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. And again, with me is John and Scott from Marasso. I believe they're logged in still, who can answer questions if I cannot. But otherwise, I'm here to answer any questions that both committee as well as the public may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. Walter, where are we going next? All right, we don't see any members of the public here right now. Is Andrea Vega? No, okay. All right. So we have no members of the public right now. So council, do we have any questions there or comments? Councillor Bothwell.
I don't think we have a, well, yeah, we do have a raised hand. I should have done my raise hand.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate all the work that Rousseau and John and the developer has done in trying to engage the community on these changes, because I've seen it evolve over the years from what I likened the original proposal to being an airport parking garage looking building to something that I think has dramatically changed to something that's going to be just more reasonable in the community. And I really appreciate the inclusion of the green space, the 1,500 square meters of parkland that the public can enjoy in the middle of the development, because what it does, it breaks up the concrete, it breaks up the two buildings. It's facing Winston, so it's not like we will have the mass of the building on both sides of Winston Road creating like a wall. We actually have that inner green space, which I think is a really good feature to see. As Mr. Corkbone mentioned, allowing the community and the residents to get out there and enjoy that space. I appreciate that it's gone down from 22 and 19 on the east side of the building, where they originally proposed to do it on the side lot, to being 19 and 12, 12 being the maximum permitted, 19 being, considering the Odyssey is 20 next door, putting a 19 there, it's interesting that the proposal has changed. I do want to ask staff, about Section 37, because the report does state that the province was reviewing development charges and community benefits, and we're at a position where they've now determined that there's a 2-year transition with the existing Section 37 being in place that we have in the Planning Act, as well as in our official plan and our guidelines. I'd like to ask planning staff how we're going to start that discussion with the community, considering we're at the open house stage now, and part of the guidelines recommend that a community group be formed to discuss this development as part of Section 37. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell, for your question. We fully intend on engaging the community in accordance with our Section 37 policies. We will be doing that in the near future.
Okay, I appreciate that. Just one more quick question. What we found with today's meeting, and I know this will probably come out from my fellow councillors as well, is that it's not effective for public engagement. We struggled with technology at the beginning of this meeting. We've struggled with trying to get the delegations who tried to participate to easily participate, and the people who couldn't participate by technology are looking for opportunities to have that conversation. I think that when we do our statutory public meeting, which whether it's in the near future, I'm expecting that this applicant is hoping to move quickly, that we structure that in such a way that with COVID, I'm sure we can have walk-in boards either at the Casablanca or the Peach King Center for a few hours where people can come in, provide their comments, speak to the applicant, and have planning staff there as well to address their comments too. And then we can certainly follow that with the statutory public meeting and incorporate the comments that are received from that earlier public engagement session. But we really have to get multiple different avenues for the public to be able to participate in this. As Mr. Corcoran mentioned, I was at the May 2019 meeting, and yes, there was the applicant reached out to all the community here, which was really great. He didn't need to do that. He took that extra step. There was a great turnout at the Casablanca Inn. He had all the boards put up there. People walked around with planning staff, and I listened to what my community was saying, and that's what I'm doing. I'm listening to what the community is saying about this development. And taking that forward. But I really think that the next meeting has to have a better public engagement strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Councillor Sharp?
Hey, sorry, I just had some background noise that I was trying to get to quiet down. Sorry, just one moment. Julie, I'm on. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. So I had some comments that I wanted to make about this, and you know, I was at the open houses, and I've been following this project since its inception. And so some of the things, there's a few things that I like about this development. One is rebuilding of the banquet center and the hotel. Casablanca is a high-end banquet hall, and it is a benefit to have that in Grimsby for events like the museum fundraiser, the Mayor's Gala, the Authors Series, and various other charity and community functions. We'd be doing these things out of town if we didn't have a banquet center in Grimsby to do this. And it's a benefit to be able to do this at home. Personally, I had my wedding reception at the Casablanca Hotel. It was a great party and went off without a hitch. And I was happy to host my wedding in my home and in Grimsby. And that's something that I think is good to have. And so one of the other things that I wanted to question about is, so I like having the hotel, and what kind of assurances do we have that the hotel will not be converted into residential use in the future?
Sorry, is that a question to the applicant?
The question is to staff, but maybe he can ask the applicant.
Sorry, I'll leave it to Walter to answer if he.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Councillor Sharp. There are provisions we can incorporate into the zoning bylaw that can guarantee a minimum size hotel space, banquet space. We can get fairly detailed in the zoning regulations. There's also site plan control where we'd have the ability to regulate that kind of a use and the provision of that kind of space. Also, in the end, there will ultimately be an application for draft plan of condominium approval. In this case, it may be standard condominium or a combination of standard and common element condominium, where again, there will be another opportunity to guarantee the provision of this kind of space.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not trying to imply in any way that the developer has any intent to change the project. And so it's just one of the things that I'd like to see that it come to fruition in the way that it's been proposed. Because one of the other things that I like is that the developer is also, as I understand, the developer is the owner of the hotel and the commercial space. And I like that since he is the owner and the developer, and he won't be just walking away from this project once the building is done and sold and built. And since they will continue to be part of the community and a good corporate citizen in the town of Grimsby, it's my understanding that one of the developers, John Mellenbacher, is already involved in the community, and he's on the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Board, which is, to me, is an early sign of good corporate citizenship. One of the things that I have concerns about, and I think my other colleagues and fellow councillors have made the same, is parking. And I know that the developer talked about it, but this development will need to meet all of the parking requirements to get my support. For the hotel, the banquet center, the residential and visitor, and for the restaurant and commercial, and with no shared commercial visitor parking. This is something that hasn't worked in the past, and with the developer also being an owner, maybe they would heed my advice. Is that we have seen condo boards, and in this case, the owners of the commercial space, having trouble stopping residents from parking in the shared commercial visitor parking, and I'd like to see that not happen. Instead, I would like to see separate signed commercial parking, which is visibly signed and in an area that's accessible from the street. Since there's no above ground parking at all, there's nothing on other than that circle in the front. All the parking here is underground, and I think that it's really important that we direct the people from the street to be able to come underground, park their car, and shop at the retail or use the restaurant space. One of the last things I want to talk about is that that amenity space, the open space between the two buildings. I think that's another benefit to the community, and I could really see residents, including myself, going and sitting in that space and drinking coffee, shopping at like if there's a coffee shop there, if there's somewhere for me to go and shop, I could see myself spending some time there. It be as a part of like a waterfront festival. And you could incorporate the hotel and banquet center and potentially close the street, use the waterfront trail. It's something that could really be used to make some positive like festival community activity in that area. So I think these things can be a great benefit to the community. And we'll have to see where this goes from here. But hopefully the developer can heed some of those suggestions from myself. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor
If I
Sharp.
could-
Oh, go
I think
ahead,
interject.
Martin.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just speaking with John Mellebacher. He's on the line here. And I think he'd like to respond to Councillor Sharp in terms of some of the commitments we've made and how he sees this use and development proceed in the future. So John, if you're there, would you mind unmuting and providing some of your comments?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep,
Great, thank
we
you.
can.
Great. Sorry you can't see me. I'm up in Muskoka and the bandwidth isn't very good, so it's better if I keep my video off. Just to answer my partner and I, who's Scott Moffat, who's also on the call right now, we have a long-term plan to want to own the hotel, to run the hotel. And the reason that we've designed it this way is to put the convention space back up into a location within the property where you actually can have water views again, which was the biggest draw originally with the Casablanca Hotel for years, which we lost with the Grand Haven site that's in front of us right now. So not only are we investing, should this all go through and get approved, in the convention space, which will live on for many generations to be able to have lots of parties there, but having a convention space, you need hotel space with it as well. So I just want to go back to let you know, obviously there's some restrictions within the site plan application to make sure that we don't get rid of the hotel, but we actually like the hotel, want to keep the hotel and look forward to managing the hotel for years to come. So I just want to hammer that point home to let you know that in our mind, the hotel is not going anywhere. We just want to make it a more viable hotel space by bringing back the convention area. And as for your parking, we understand the need for parking. We've worked within all the requests for all the parking, and we understand your concerns, Councillor Sharp. So we will keep to go back to the drawing board and make sure we have everything you need.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, John. Councillor Vardy.
There. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. So thank you very much. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of questions. One is the number of units seem to have gone up like quite significantly. Now, is that because we're going to have smaller units, or is that in reference to the hotel? I wonder if you could explain, because there seems to be a significant difference from what they were before to what they are now. My second question has to do with security for the underground parking. And because I just noticed that you had some external entrances to the underground parking. And I don't know if that's a requirement from a planning perspective, but I guess it's, I mean, I'm always kind of frightened every time I go into an underground parking lot, you know, unless it's like super well lit and well laid out. So that's a second question. And I wanted to say that I fully agree with Councillor Bothwell's observation that we need to find a better way for public participation. And I appreciate that this is not your choice of having to do it this way. But I do think, while respecting the restrictions around COVID, that we can find a way so that we can better facilitate the public to come in and look at the development. And part of the reason is, even after I put my glasses on, I was having trouble making out some of these slides because they're so small. So I think that would be a good idea if we had some way we could do that. I agree with Councillor Sharp that we need to have designated retail parking. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this development, but in Ottawa, Lansdowne Park was redeveloped, and you know, it was a kind of a massive redevelopment. And the underground parking for Lansdowne Park, which I have to say, when they proposed it, I was completely against it. But after they built it, I loved it. the underground parking actually had areas identified where you'd be directed to, and it's bright. So depending on what store you're going to in the retail area or where you were living, you'd be kind of directed to that parking. Like it would be sort of well identified. And I'm just saying that might be something to take a look at how that was done, because it's really well done. So those are my questions and sort of comments. Oh, I know I'm not supposed to comment, but I like the stage. I think that's a great idea. So I hope that if that becomes part of it, that there is access to whatever would be needed from an electrical standpoint in case you wanted to put some kind of bandstand there or something. So those are my questions and sort of comments that I'm not supposed to give. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vardy.
So number of units and security for the underground were really the questions. The others were more comment-like.
Yeah. Martin, do you want to comment on the parking? I think you already did, but it's good to hear it again.
Sure, not a problem. So I've written down Councillor Vardy's comments here, and I'll go through them one by one. The first, which is the number or the increase in the number of units, that's primarily a function of the hotel. So with the original proposal from 2017, there were no hotel units provided for within the development proposal. So that was a strictly residential building. So with this new proposal from late last year and this current design, what we're doing is we're combining the hotel units with residential. So that 420 units is a mix of everything. To your second question about underground access. So I'm not a building code expert, but I think I know enough to answer this question. But I believe we're required to have pedestrian access and exit to grade with staircases. So if that's what you're referring to, they're required by the building code, and we have to have them in case there's issues below grade and you can't drive up. You have to have those exits to the grade. To your third comment about better public engagement and consultation, this is a tough one that I think we'll have to, between myself and Rosso and town staff, to deal with. I've been a part of projects in northern municipalities where internet access is not as great. And the way we handled that was dedicated time slots to view material and ask questions. So if it's, depending on how big the room might be at the hotel might be, we allow in 10 to 15 people at a time. They can ask their question for 15, 20 minutes and then they leave, just so we can control the crowds and ensure that people are able to ask their questions that are able to at, let's say, virtual settings. So I know that stuff has worked. And if that's the path, either as a component of the staff meeting, or if that's the way it's held, I guess we can work that out. And I think I can speak on behalf of Rosso and that they'll be happy to help structure that if needed. The parking question about dedicated retail parking, I think we can work that out. What we're finding these days with larger development applications is you're able to cordon or section off levels or sections of parking below grade for certain uses. So you have signage that you mentioned that are clearly lit and signed that are for retail or visitor, and the residential parking is usually secured with a key fob. So if you live in this building, you get to a certain point, use your entry key and the gate closes, and that's for the residents and perhaps even the hotel patrons. But we can certainly look at how to better divide up the retail areas and commercial areas, restaurant areas, because Councillor Sharp was right. We're providing lay-by parking on both sides, on the north and south, but that is it for on-grade parking. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answers, Martin. Councillor Frick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Walter, for your presentation. Thank you, Martin, for your presentation. Very exciting. And John, thank you for being here to answer some of our questions. I must admit, of the whole project, the most exciting thing for me is the hotel. I think that's one of the things that's missing, not only in Grimsby, but in the whole region. It sounds like you're going to be building a really first-class, top market hotel, which is, I think, is really, really required in this region, not just alone in Grimsby. And I look forward to seeing that go through for sure. I was just curious, how many stories is the hotel itself? And how many beds will the hotel have? That's one question. You can come back, you can write them down and answer them after. Like my colleagues, I'm also very concerned about parking, and I'd rather see ample parking or extra parking rather than just enough as per the standards that dictate. And like 1.5 is my magic number for residential for sure. But then you've got the park, you've got the retail, you've got restaurant, you've got hotel. You've got the public outdoor area, and all that's going to require some kind of parking of some kind. So I'm looking forward to you coming back with a different and new type of parking plan, because I know you're deficient, you said by 36, but I would question even if that's enough in the end. So so anyway, I look forward to. I guess there's a lot of things to be done, a lot more information to be found out about. Because there's some things missing, I think, from your slides there tonight in terms of the hotel and some of the other various parts of the buildings. Just curious is about the hotel again. Are you going to be using one of the large hotel operators to? Are you going to use one of their names or one of their franchises to as part of the hotel, or are you just going to run it yourself? So that's it. I echo most of my colleagues' concerns about parking, and I think that's always going to be one of my biggest things, and the size of the building in terms of height. So I'll leave it like that because I think you've answered a lot of the other questions already. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was great. Thanks.
Martin, you're welcome to answer those questions. Thank you.
Sure, of course. So the current design of the building for phase one includes 72 hotel units, and that's going to be primarily contained in the podium, the first 4 floors of phase one. As part of our architectural package, we provided detailed floor plans to see where the layout of the restaurants, the retail, the lobbies, and the units and the hotel rooms would be. So that was part of our submission. If you don't have that information, I can certainly get it to you. And with that are detailed cross sections to show how that all kind of fits together within the podium. And I appreciate your comments about the hotel being a big part of this project, and it is. This hotel has been a piece of this town for a long period of time, and Rosso wants to, although it may change the look of it, I think they want to keep the intent. I don't know if I can answer the hotel operator question in terms of how it's going to be branded. I think what I want to try to do is defer that to Mr. Mellenbacher, and if he wants to jump in and let people know how he wants to handle that, that may be more appropriate.
Before you move on, can I ask one other thing? The restaurant, will it be on the bottom floor, top floor, in the middle? Can you give me some idea where the restaurant's going to be located?
It's going to be located on the ground floor. So all the retail and restaurants are on the ground floor of both buildings, actually. But as part of phase one, I think above that in the phase one building would be the convention space and other hotel amenity space.
That's a pity, because I really look forward to having lunch or dinner at the top floor looking at the lake.
I think if you have time, one of the floor plans I showed had the restaurant and retail facing the courtyard. Part of what you do is when you're having your dinner or your lunch and enjoying that space, there'll be a patio that looks out to that courtyard area. So you'll be looking west as opposed to north. So you can all be integrated into one big experience. But I'll leave it at that. And if you need somebody to provide some drawings or direct you to our sketches, then I can pass it along as well.
That would be very helpful. Thanks.
Will do.
So
sorry, John.
Yeah, sure. Do you mind if I jump in? So
thank you.
In terms of getting a meal with a view, I would suggest that if this all goes through, you're welcome to be able to rent out the convention space at any given time, and we'll be able to feed you up there with the view to the lake unobstructed from the top floor. Any any of the conventions, weddings, and types of private parties that we have right now, we envision it happening up at the top with views to the water that will also serve food as well. So although it won't be the actual restaurant, we envision serving meals up there and certainly taking advantage of that beautiful view.
Oh, that's good to hear. Thanks.
Okay. In terms of operator, we're wrestling with that right now. One of the things that we like about the current hotel is that it's a family. We inherited the family from Mr. Snively, and he's kept that family together for a long time. And my partner and I, although we're not primary hotel operators, we've grown to love the family, and it's it's an extension of our company, and we envision keeping that together for long term. However, there's been a lot of hotel operators that have approached us, if we get these new plans in place, that would love to have a flag on this property. So we're seeing if we can sort of mesh those two things together and figure out a way to maybe do both. So we haven't made that decision yet, but we promise whatever we decide to do, it'll be first rate. As far as the rooms, currently we have 80 rooms in the hotel that run with a very high vacancy rate most of the time, and then when the conventions are full, we don't have enough rooms. So although we've applied for 72 rooms right now, which is sort of the magic number, which is close to what we have, my partner and I envisioned maybe being able to design 30 or 40 rooms that are sort of adjacent to the hotel that we kept in our portfolio, that we'd be able to swing into the hotel, or sort of see how the hotel goes over the few years and maybe condominiumize just that portion of it. So what we're trying to do is bring some flexibility to the site that would allow it to have ample rooms that we'd be able to bring at the convention, but also run at an efficient hotel should it need to during the downtime. So what we'd like to be able to say is there'd be a minimum of 72 hotel rooms with up to maybe 110.
Hey,
Just curious, what's the
installed in the background.
sorry, what's the ratio of how do you calculate the parking spaces for hotel rooms? Is it the same as residential, or is it different?
I defer that to Martin.
Sorry, I'm just getting up my table here. No, it's a different rate than residential. The required is 1 space per room. So if there's 72 rooms in our proposal, we're proposing 72 parking spaces to satisfy the zoning bylaw.
Okay. Anyways, thanks to all, and I look forward to your updated presentation related to the various things we're talking about tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for those questions and answers, and that was very exciting. Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I've received a question from a resident. So I noticed that you included a wind study, and I appreciate that, because I'd like to see those with the tall buildings. We do have it for the GO Station secondary plan area, but I don't think we have it in our Winston secondary plan. So I appreciate that you submitted an initial wind study. In it, it recommended further wind tunnel testing, because it identified that there will be some issues with winds from the north through the center of the two buildings. So I just would like to see, if possible, some of that further research on the wind effects and the mitigating strategies you're going to use. If that can come forward maybe for the next statutory public meeting, the resident would appreciate having a little more information on how we're going to handle the wind mitigation. The other thing I just wanted to ask, and just to clarify, is it the 11th floor that's got the convention ballroom, whatever facilities on it, Martin?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. We've got the hotel ballroom, kitchen, and some of the pre-function space on the 11th story of the Phase 1 building.
Okay. And you can get back some more wind mitigation information, hopefully, right?
That's correct. If you could allow me 1 minute to comment on that. We are looking at ways to mitigate the wind factor. So if you can picture the site plan in your heads, that little drop-off circular area is the wind tunnel that the consultant's concerned about. And we've discussed internally on how to handle and mitigate. We didn't want to close it off because it provides a good access and view from the courtyard area, but we could look at some permeable screening or other screen options to still mitigate the wind effect, but also provide that clear passage that we want to achieve with that space.
Thank you, because it gets pretty wicked down here. Just, I'm sure you guys know when you've been down visiting this area. So thank you.
I appreciate that, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Sharp.
Thanks, Mayor Jordan. Just one other question. So I didn't realize that the banquet center is on the 11th floor. And what is on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor of the podium in phase 1?
So the podium for phase 1 on the 1st floor, we have the hotel lobby, some back of house administration areas, as well as retail and restaurant space. On the mezzanine of that, we also have 17 hotel rooms. On level 2 of the podium, we have an additional 26 hotel rooms with some amenity spaces like pools, some back of house, as well as a spa proposal. And then on level 3 and 4 of the podium, we have more hotel rooms. So 29 on level 3 and an additional 20 on the 4th.
Okay, so most of the hotel is within the podium in the lower area.
Other than the 11th story where the ballroom is, yes, you're correct, Councillor. All the public type uses are on the first 4 stories of the building.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I see no further questions. Walter Basic is going to give us a little run through on how to access the website, and so you can get further information from the website. So we're just going to do that as an information. Thank you, Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just start here. Okay. Which one is it? There it is. Okay. So and this is for the benefit of everybody else watching also. This is being recorded, so if you need to check again. But to get to the site or the page where all of the information is that was submitted by the applicants, all the detailed information, you go to Town Hall, then Official Plan and Zoning, you hit Current Planning Applications, and then there's a map that shows where they all are. With number 4 Winward Drive is right on top here. And there's a brief description of the proposal and the application, and the list of all of the submissions that were submitted with the application. I'll just call one up, the urban design brief, just to give you an idea. Take a minute to load up. It's a PDF document, and then you'll be able to go through all of the rationale behind the design, and look as an example. So I'll just run through it here. But again, as you can see, there. So it's fairly easy to get to, and there's a wealth of information that's available to anybody in the public, and as well as members of council. Councillor Frake asked more specific detailed questions about some of the design options. There are architectural floor plates, Councillor Frake, in that section of the of our website, where you can see to real detail what's being proposed. Thank you.
Thanks, Walter.
Thank you for that little run through, Walter. Seeing no more questions or comments, that brings us to the close of our public meeting. I just want to thank the applicants for coming out, also the public for being here, and council that was able to participate. Just further to this, I really appreciate the applicant and their willingness to add something that another meeting where we can actually get poster boards to look at. And I really look forward to that for people that don't have accessibility to internet, live streaming, or just aren't comfortable on a Zoom platform. So with that, I'll bid adieu, and the meeting is adjourned.